Hi, welcome to the bathtub. It's the Marlon Perkins of literature, Scott Bradfield, also AKA the Master Bather. That's the Master Bather's parakeet. Look, she's pissed off because I put the hat on again. You want to come down? Come on, come on. You want to come down? Okay. I've tried this a million times. She's just obsessed about it. You're not gonna go in my head anymore. Watch this. Okay, you ready? Now she's gonna be so pissed off. You're pissed off. You're not gonna get on that hat, are you? You want to get my shoulder? You can't get on my shoulder, but you can't. There you go. So anyway, I think I'm a 67-year-old man, former professor of literature. I can take on a goddamn parakeet. She's not gonna outsmart this Master Bather. We're doing you have to pretend you're hearing Mason Williams playing classical gas, because now we're in the post-tech edition, pure mineral mountain water, cruel light of day, no pixels, and just the bird, just the natural wonders of the bird kingdom. We're going to do classical gas, and we're going to do in Franz Kafka. The question we asked the perennial question: are these so-called great writers who we're supposed to read in college, are they worth reading in the bathtub? And we have a very simple sliding scale. We have no. Henry James is really close to no as far as I'm concerned. We have yeah. There's lots of good yeahs out there, but there's a category of hell yeah, and we really do think most of these guys are hell yeahs, and Kafka's a hell yeah. Okay, he's a hell yeah. He's really great fun in the bathtub. I haven't read him in many years. He was Dodo. You can calm down now. Just gotta think about it now. I read him. He was one of the first serious writers I read when I was a teenager in the bathtub. Obviously, I read the Trial and I read The Castle when I was about 17. Okay, we're going back. Here we go. It's a horrible old hat. I tell you, my wife hates this hat. It's the only one I could find that would cover over my horrible face while I'm going in the sun. And so I like Kafka. I read all the complete stories when I was young, and I haven't really read him since I was about 17 or 18. I did teach the Trial once in an undergraduate novel course, and I liked it. My students were kind of bored by it, which I thought they would really enjoy it. And I remember not the time when I reread the Trial. For some reason, I just wasn't as interested in it as I was the first time I read it. And I thought, well, maybe Kafka wasn't as good as he thought. Maybe this little so-and-so. And I only just started reading. Good, Dodo, you're doing much better. I started to read him because I was really interested in this writer, a book, an interesting literary critic. This book is called Kafka's Last Trial by a man named Benjamin Balint. I don't know anything about him, but he's kind of a literary historian. It's kind of a fun book to take into the bathtub. And I was interested in it because I'd read an essay, I think in the New Yorker, about how all of Kafka's papers, many of you know Max Brod, whose name is on every edition of Kafka. Basically, Kafka published very little in his lifetime, and he had a friend named Max Brod, who was a kind of famous, well-known writer in Weimar, Germany and Poland during the 20s and 30s. In Germany, I don't remember where they were, and he was close friends of Kafka, and he's considered a kind of a minor, mediocre novelist. I don't know anything about his work, except he was a very close friend of Kafka. And when Kafka died, he asked Brod to take all his work, which he was never satisfied. He was constantly revising his work, and just kept assembling all these books that he could never finish. The Master Bather is getting kind of like Kafka. I'm getting a bit like that in my old age. And he had all these books. He was not happy with any of them, and almost most of them were unfinished, like the Trial and the Castle and so forth. And he asked Max Brod to destroy them. And Max Brod could not destroy them, and he thought Kafka was a great writer. I think he was right. And he preserved all these papers, and kept them, and passed them on to a woman who looks like she was a girlfriend of Max Brod's or something. It was almost like given to her as a gift. Anyway, all the Kafka's papers now are supposedly have been inherited in some woman's house. I forget where she is. I don't remember if she's in Israel. The Israeli government, the story is, I've only about the first third of the way through this book. The Israeli government tried to get the rights to preserve the papers, and there was private. The papers belonged to this woman because they were given to her, and then they said, well, no, they're matters of national historical interest and so forth. But I believe the last I read about this, all these papers are in some old woman's house that's filled with cats and no one's cleaned it or something. I can't remember the essay, but I guess these papers are all just like lying around somewhere. Anyway, that got me interested in Kafka again. So I read a book I haven't read. I had read The Trial. I had read The Castle. I read most of the famous books of his, and I'd never read America. Now, first of all, look at that book. I should have brought all my Penguin. We've talked about Valentine's. This is probably one of the, oh no, so much of that I do. Okay. We talked about the Penguin, the Valentine copies. These are beautiful copies. Isn't that a gorgeous book? They took some artwork from Paul Calpe. I don't know who that is, Paul Calpe. Anyway, it's a beautiful copy of America. I have no idea whether it's the best translation. Most of them are translated by the same people, and it doesn't really matter. And there's the introduction by Max Brod. Anyway, it's called America. It's also unfinished, like most of his books were unfinished. And I wanted to read it and give it a try. I had tried reading, the first chapter is called The Stoker. And the setup of the book is about a young, I think he's German kid, who's he got the maid pregnant. Okay. He got the maid pregnant, and his parents sent him to America just to get him out of trouble. Because otherwise this woman was going to sue him or something or try to get money from him. Oh my gosh, Dodo. Look at her. Oh my God. Anyway, what was I talking about? So he sends this kid to America, and the book starts with this chapter called The Stoker, which I believe Kafka published in his lifetime. And it's kind of one of those typical kind of slightly surreal comedy where he's getting off the boat, but the stoker, this guy who works on the boat, comes to him and he wants to complain to his boss and all this sort of stuff. And this young kid named Carl accompanies him, and it's not like the sort of nightmarish thing as The Trial or The Castle, but it's odd. And the first chapter is not my favorite part, but by the end of this long chapter, this long scene, Carl gets a letter from his uncle. And the thing about Kafka is there's all these disconnections and misunderstandings, and nothing goes the way you think it's going to go. That's my entire take on Kafka. Almost every paragraph and every scene ends in a way you didn't quite expect it to end. And the way the first chapter ends is they keep saying, well, this guy doesn't have your name, he's not connected to you, you've never heard from him. Anyway, it turns out to be this kid's uncle, and he goes off to live with him. It's like a very brief period of happiness for any Kafka character. And so Carl goes to live with his uncle. There's this really weird second chapter where the kid a friend of the uncle, takes him off to his home in the country and says, let's go to the country and then you can meet my family and then my daughter and all this stuff. And while he's out there, the uncle says, you have to come back tonight. You can't spend the night there because you should be home. So the whole time that he's there, the people are saying, oh, it's okay, you can stay, don't worry about it, you can stay, there's nothing wrong with it. And the kid knows he's done something wrong. It is really, it's all almost real. It's the sort of thing where you feel like, well, two people are giving you orders, and one of them's telling this, and another one's telling another thing. And he follows along with it. He knows he should go home. And they're waiting to give him a letter. This is when they got me hooked. He says, at midnight, I'm giving you a letter. And Carl says, I wonder what the letter is. So he sticks around to get the letter. The letter says, if you don't come home tonight, I'm disowning you. You can't live with me anymore. It's from the uncle. So they've got, I'm probably not summarizing that well, but the book leads on to Carl basically wandering through the countryside in the company of these two kind of trampish characters. One of the only things he's been warned about when he goes to America is stay away from Irish men. And one of them's Irish, so he keeps thinking he's going to get in trouble. You're okay, Dodo. I can deal with this. And he ends up working in some hotel. He thinks it's like an inn. It's a small inn, and he goes up there to get food. And I was going to read a couple passages, but it's a little difficult with this stupid bird. It's very funny. It's a very funny book. You never know what's going to happen next. I was completely absorbed by the whole book until maybe near the last 50 pages, 40, 50 pages, which were unfinished in Kafka's lifetime. And it starts to go into a territory about a theater. He gets involved with this, I think the Oklahoma Theater Company it's called, which looks really interesting, but he died before he could finish it. But anyway, this trip this kid takes, he goes into this inn, and after he's been there for a few days, the woman lets him work there. And he gets to work on the elevators. And it turns out this inn has like hundreds of floors. It goes up and down this elevator. And the kid he drives the elevator up and down. And it turns out there's lots of kids running elevators. It really opens up, it really is a dreamish sort of world. But it has its own logic. It's not simply surreal. It's just not weird things happening. It's a very narrative story of this kid trying to find his way through this country, which is filled with cars. There's like long descriptions of cars streaming by on the streets. Anyway, I had for some reason thought this was not one of his best books. I think it was probably the most enjoyable of the 3 books I've read. They say it's his most optimistic book. It's not optimistic. It's pretty dark. And it's pretty funny. But you do want to know what's going to happen to Carl. And like I said, almost every paragraph ends in a way I didn't expect it to end. The way people change their opinions and the way they get interested in things and where they go and what they decide to do never goes where you think it's going to go. Anyway, hell yeah. We're going to read some more Franz Kafka. I got the short stories out now too. I want to finish the Balint book and maybe give you a better report on it than I gave you so far. You're being much better, but I think it's the hat. Okay. Happy bathing. She thought she had to think that one over. Stay safe.